There his eyes met Juliet, a radiant Capulet, and in an instant their fates intertwined. But fate had a cruel twist. A street brawl erupted between the rival factions. Mercutio, Romeo's dear friend, was slain by Tybalt, Juliet's hot-headed cousin. Blinded by grief and rage, Romeo avenged his friend, striking down Tybalt. For this act, the Prince of Verona banished Romeo from the city, separating the newlyweds. Juliet was devastated. Her parents, unaware of her secret marriage, arranged her union with Paris. Desperate, Juliet returned to Friar Lawrence, seeking a way out of her predicament. He devised a perilous plan, a potion that would simulate death for 42 hours. Juliet bravely drank the potion, appearing lifeless, and was laid in the family tomb. Tragically, the message explaining the plan never reached Romeo in his exile. Instead, he received news of his beloved Juliet's untimely death. Overwhelmed by sorrow, Romeo bought a potent poison, determined to join her in death. He rushed back to Verona, to the Capulet tomb, to be with his eternal love. Inside the tomb, he found Juliet, seemingly lifeless. Believing her truly gone, he drank the poison. He died beside her, his last breath a testament to his undying devotion. Moments later, Juliet awoke to find her beloved Romeo dead beside her. Heartbroken beyond measure, she took his dagger and ended her own life, joining him in eternity. The discovery of their bodies brought the feuding families to their knees, finally ending their bitter rivalry.
All right, let's talk about Romeo and Juliet. I mean, it's the story, right? The one we all feel like we know inside and out. The absolute blueprint for tragic young love. But what if I told you there's a whole other story hiding just beneath the surface? Today, we're going to peel back the layers on this legendary play and find out what's really going on with the world's most famous lovers.
For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. Gosh, those are the final lines of the play, aren't they? And they hit you. They perfectly sum up that feeling of heartbreak, that sense of inevitability, like it could never have ended any other way.
But here's the thing. What if all that woe wasn't just about fate? What if this story is actually about speed, about insane innovation, and a story that just plain refuses to stay the same? Because Shakespeare's masterpiece, it's so much bigger than just star-crossed lovers. It's driven by this incredible velocity and some really radical experiments for the stage. It's a story that's been reinventing itself for over 400 years. So yeah, let's get into it.
All right, first up, a 5-day tragedy. And I want to start here with time, because you think of this as this huge epic romance, but the actual timeline, it is shockingly, and I mean shockingly, short.
No, seriously, the entire story, from the moment they meet to their very last breath, happens in just 4 to 6 days. It's not some drawn-out, months-long affair. It's a total whirlwind. And that speed, that incredible haste, it's not just a detail. It's the engine of the whole play. It turns every single choice into this massive, high-stakes, life-or-death decision.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It's wild. Day 1, they meet at a party. Okay, pretty normal. Day 2, they get married. In secret. Day 3, a massive street fight breaks out. Mercutio's dead, Tybalt's dead, and Romeo gets banished from the city. Day 4, Juliet, to get out of another marriage, fakes her own death with a sleeping potion. And by day 5, it's all over. Both of them are gone. It's just one impulsive, chaotic decision after another, all fueled by this desperate race against the clock.
So, moving on to Shakespeare's radical innovations. Because that crazy fast pace, that was just one of the tricks he had up his sleeve. You gotta understand, he wasn't just rehashing some old story he found. No way. He was actively breaking the rules of drama to build something nobody had ever seen before. Think of the play like this. It's a story of two halves. For the first two acts, you're pretty much watching a romantic comedy. It's funny, it's full of clever wordplay, puns, all the giddy excitement of young love. You're having a good time. And then, bam, Mercutio dies, and Shakespeare just yanks the rug out from under you. The play takes this nosedive straight into harrowing tragedy. That sudden shift is pure genius because it completely shocks the audience and makes that final devastating ending feel so much more, well, devastating. He also did some really cool things with poetry itself. Take the sonnet. You know, that classic 14-line poem? Back in Shakespeare's day, it had a very specific job. It was what you used to write about a love you couldn't have. It was basically a poetic monologue for complaining about being in the friend zone. And that's exactly how Romeo uses it at the beginning of the play when he's all mopey about a girl named Rosalind. But then he meets Juliet. And this is where things get really clever. He starts a sonnet, like you'd expect, "My lips two blushing pilgrims ready stand." But instead of finishing it himself, Juliet jumps in. She answers him, right in the middle of the poem. They finish the sonnet together. It's this brilliant, incredible moment where Shakespeare takes a form that's all about one-sided, lonely love and turns it into a back-and-forth dialogue. It's like poetic fireworks, showing us, not just telling us, that this connection is instant, it's mutual, and it is the real deal. Which brings us to one of the biggest debates about this play, a real chicken or the egg question, fate or foolishness. Were these two lovers doomed from the very beginning, or was it just a string of really, really bad decisions and awful luck? I mean, you could argue the play gives the game away in the first few lines. The prologue straight up tells the audience that we're about to watch a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. Star-crossed, basically meaning their fate was doomed by the stars. It sounds like they never even had a shot. But of course, it's never that simple, is it? On the one hand, you have all this evidence for fate. The prologue, Romeo's bad feelings about the party, the way they constantly blame the stars. But on the other hand, you've got so much evidence for pure chance and human error. A critical message doesn't get delivered because of a plague quarantine. Talk about bad luck. Romeo completely loses his cool and kills Tybalt, and Juliet agrees to this incredibly risky plan to fake her own death on like 2 days' notice. So what is it? Is it destiny or just a perfect storm of bad choices? I think Shakespeare kind of just leaves that question hanging there for us to wrestle with.
And speaking of things that aren't exactly what they seem, let's tackle the ever-changing balcony scene. Yeah, you know the one. It's probably the most iconic scene in the history of theater.
Except there's no balcony. I know, right? It's kind of wild, but it's true. If you go back to Shakespeare's original script, the stage direction just says Juliet appears at a window. That's it. So, if Shakespeare didn't write a balcony, where on earth did it come from?
Well, it turns out it was added later. The idea evolved over time. The original Italian story from way back in 1524 mentioned Romeo climbing to a window, so the seed was there. But the first person we know of to put it on an actual balcony was a playwright named Thomas Otway in 1679. And then the real clincher was in 1748. A super famous actor named David Garrick staged his own version, and it was a smash hit. His production cemented the balcony in everyone's minds, and it's been there ever since.
And that really brings us to the heart of why this play has lasted so long. It's a story for all time. That whole balcony evolution is the perfect example of the play's secret to success. It hasn't survived for 4 centuries by being some dusty museum piece. It survived because it's always changing, always being reinvented for a new generation. I mean, just think about all the ways this story has been reimagined. Can you believe there were versions in the 18th century that gave it a happy ending? It's been turned into these gorgeous classic operas and ballets. Of course, it became the musical West Side Story, swapping out feuding families for rival gangs in New York. And on film, we've had everything from Zeffirelli's classic traditional take to Baz Luhrmann's completely wild MTV-style update. It's even shown up in pop music, from Dire Straits all the way to Taylor Swift. It's like the story is this amazing canvas that every generation gets to paint on. So, after all that, after 400 years of changes and reinterpretations, what are we left with? Is Romeo and Juliet just a timeless love story? Or is it something bigger? A really powerful and frankly timeless warning about the world we create? A warning about how hate and speed and the failures of adults can end up destroying the best things in the world. And that's the question, I think, that keeps this 400-year-old play feeling like it could have been written yesterday.
As, the greatest love story ever told. But what if I told you it's actually one of the greatest stories of failure? I mean, it's this perfect storm of just awful timing, missed messages, and some really, really bad decisions. So today, we are going to unpack that fatal chain of events that turned this legendary romance into an absolute tragedy. So that's the big question, right? How does a love story, this epic romance, turn into a total tragedy? Well, it doesn't happen all at once. It's more like a line of dominoes, just waiting to be tipped over. One tiny mistake triggers the next, and then the next, and pretty soon the whole thing is crashing down, and there's just no way to stop it. So let's go find that very first domino to fall. Okay, Section 1, a deadly duel. And this is really how a simple street fight totally ignites a catastrophe. You won't believe how fast it all happens. The whole thing is like a powder keg, and this fight is the match. And just look at how fast this all goes down. It is a brutal, unstoppable domino effect. So first, you've got Mercutio, who's Romeo's best friend, and he gets into it with Tybalt, Juliet's fiery cousin. Boom, Tybalt kills Mercutio. So then Romeo, just blinded by pure rage, goes after Tybalt for revenge and kills him. Just like that. And before you can even blink, the Prince of Verona shows up and lays down the law. Romeo, you're banished. Gone. And here's where it gets just heartbreaking. The crazy thing is, Romeo and Juliet had just gotten secretly married. I mean, their life together was supposed to be just beginning, and instead it's completely ripped apart almost immediately. They're separated, and this beautiful secret they share is about to become a very, very deadly one. All right, Section 2, the desperate plan. This is a real last-ditch effort to get these two back together. So with Romeo gone, everything just spirals out of control. Juliet's parents, who have no idea she's already married, decide to marry her off to this guy, Paris. She's completely trapped, so she and Friar Lawrence, they have to come up with something, and fast. And that desperation, well, it leads to what we're calling the Friar's Gamble. In it is a huge gamble. I mean, the plan is wild. They're going to fake Juliet's death so she can get out of this new marriage, and then she can sneak away and reunite with Romeo. It sounds crazy, but you gotta understand, at this point, it feels like it's their only shot. So here's how it's supposed to work. And for this to have any chance, everything has to go exactly right. Step 1, Juliet drinks the special potion that'll make her look dead. Step 2, her grieving family places her in their crypt. Step 3, and this is the most important part, a letter gets sent to Romeo explaining the whole thing. And then, Step 4, Romeo shows up, rescues her from the tomb, and they run off together. Seems foolproof, right? But man, this plan is balanced on a knife's edge. Okay, Section 3, a message lost. And here it is, folks, the single point of failure. This is where it all goes wrong. The simplest, most basic part of the plan is what brings the whole thing crashing down. That's it. The letter, it never reached him. All that planning, all that risk, and the message explaining everything never makes it to Romeo. Think about that. In a story filled with sword fights and epic romance, the whole tragedy boils down to a lost piece of mail. A simple failure in communication. And that one mistake kicks off the final terrible scene. Section 4, Tragedy in the Tomb. Because Romeo didn't get the letter, the only news he gets is the news everyone else gets, that Juliet, the love of his life, is dead. And he believes it. and he is just completely destroyed by grief. He doesn't stop to think, he doesn't ask questions. He hears Juliet is dead and he just acts. He rushes straight back to her tomb. But when he gets there, he runs into Paris, the guy she was supposed to marry. They fight and Romeo kills him. And then, with nothing left to live for, he takes a vial of poison and dies right there next to her. And this is the most tragic part of the whole story. Just moments later, literally moments after Romeo dies, Juliet wakes up, the potion wears off. And the first thing she sees is her new husband, dead, lying right beside her. The timing, it's just absolutely devastating. So you see how their fates are just this perfect, awful mirror of each other. Romeo dies because he believes a lie, that she is dead. So he drinks poison to join her. Then Juliet wakes up, sees the truth, that he is dead, and uses his dagger to join him. Two final, desperate acts of love, both sealing their doom. And it's all because of one catastrophic misunderstanding. So, what was it all for? Section 5. A feud's heavy cost. This is the final reckoning. After all this death, the two families, the Capulets and the Montagues, are finally forced to face the consequences of their stupid, pointless feud. And the price they pay is just staggering. We always think about Romeo and Juliet, but it wasn't just 2 lives lost. The final body count is 5. 5 young people are dead because of this senseless rivalry. You've got Mercutio, Tybalt, Paris, and then of course Romeo and Juliet. This feud didn't just kill a couple of lovers, it wiped out an entire generation. And yeah, shattered by it all, the families finally agree to stop fighting. But the story leaves us with this really haunting truth. They finally make peace, but it's a peace made in the shadow of their children's graves. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What is peace really worth when it costs so much? Stories ever told. We're talking about a rapid-fire tragedy where love, hate, and some seriously bad timing all collide with, well, devastating results. So how does this even happen? How do you go from a secret wedding to 5 people dead in just a handful of days? It sounds kind of impossible, right? But that's the central mystery here. We're going to unpack the exact chain of events, a mix of bad decisions and just plain bad luck that turned a romance into a total catastrophe. And believe me, it all happens way faster than you'd think. Everything really starts to spiral out of control with one single fight in the street. This right here is the moment the story just passes the point of no return. It's where rage and revenge take over and set a course that nobody can stop. It's like a domino effect, really. It all kicks off with the challenge between Tybalt and Mercutio. When Mercutio is killed, Romeo is just consumed by grief and pure rage. He hunts down Tybalt and kills him. So, in just a matter of minutes, Romeo goes from being a happy newlywed to a killer. And the prince's punishment? It's swift. Banishment. He's exiled from his home, his family, and of course, his new wife. I mean, just think about the timing here for a second. These two have just gotten secretly married, they're filled with all this hope for the future, and then boom, instantly torn apart. This isn't just a punishment for Romeo, it's an absolute catastrophe for them both. And it sets the stage for every single desperate decision that's about to come. So, with Romeo gone, you'd think things couldn't get any worse for Juliet, right? Well, they do. The situation gets so bad that it leads to a plan that is so risky, so full of holes that it could only come from a place of pure, utter desperation. The pressure just keeps mounting. Her parents, who are completely in the dark about her marriage to Romeo, suddenly decide she's gonna marry this nobleman, Paris. For Juliet, this is an impossible situation. She's already married, she feels trapped, cornered, and it forces her to look for a very, very dangerous way out. So she runs to Friar Lawrence, and he cooks up this wild plan. Let's walk through it. First, Juliet's going to drink a potion to make her look dead for about 42 hours. Second, her family, thinking she's gone, will lay her to rest in their tomb. Third, and this is the absolute most important part, the friar's going to send a letter to Romeo explaining the whole thing. Finally, Romeo will show up right as she's waking up and they can run away together. Simple, right? What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, famous last words. As it turns out, pretty much everything could go wrong. You've got this whole delicate house of cards, and it all rests on one little thing, a message being delivered. In a world with no cell phones, no internet, this becomes the story's fatal flaw. And this is where it all falls apart. The plan was simple. A letter gets to Romeo explaining that Juliet isn't really dead, but the reality? It's a disaster. The messenger gets held up, the letter never makes it, and the only news that reaches Romeo is the worst possible news. From someone who doesn't know the truth. Juliet is dead. So Romeo hears this, the wrong news, and he is just shattered. Believing he has nothing left to live for, he rushes back to Verona. And that brings us to the final, absolutely heartbreaking scene in the tomb, where all the pieces of the story, the love, the hate, the terrible miscommunication, all come crashing together. And what happens next is just a waterfall of tragedy, one thing right after another. Romeo gets to the tomb and finds Paris there mourning. They fight and Romeo kills him. That's another death. Then he sees Juliet, says his final goodbye, and drinks poison, dying right next to her. Just moments later, the potion wears off. Juliet wakes up, sees her dead husband, and without even a second thought, she takes his dagger and ends her own life. But here's the thing that'll really get you. This entire nightmare sequence, from the wedding to the fight, the banishment, the desperate plan, and that final scene in the tomb, all of it. It all happens in just over 2 days. 2. It's almost hard to wrap your head around how fast it all fell apart. And it's only then, standing in the middle of all this wreckage, that the feuding families, the Capulets and the Montagues, finally get it. They finally understand the true cost of all their hate. They agree to end the fighting, but that peace only comes after they've buried their own children. Which leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? What's the real tragedy here? Is it the heartbreaking loss of 2 young people who were madly in love? Or is it the fact that their entire community could only find peace after paying the highest price imaginable? It's a question that honestly makes this story absolutely timeless.